Good to go straight into the questions which we have. And the first one is a bit of perhaps a strange question. Who lights the electric lights, the husband or the wife for Shabbos? So what triggered this question is I found here the Sikha every week. There's the last 25 years, they've been publishing a Sikha from previous years. There's a group called Vad Hanochos Belahak, Kiddush, and they publish the Sikhas which from previous years. And so this past Shabbos, this past Shabbos, in honor of this Shabbos, they printed a Sikha from Tov Shilamed Hey. They was talking about Neiros Shabbos, and I found an interesting reference to the woman switching on the electric lighting. So I'd just like to go through the Sikha. There's just this piece. When the Rebbe launched this idea that girls should light Shabbos candles, so there were various questions about this. So one of the questions was if there's a justification for the daughter to be lighting a candle when there is already light in the room, or the mother is providing light in any case. So why should the daughter be making a separate bracha on lighting? That was the question. So to this, the Rebbe responds: the more light there is in the room, even if it's in the same room, at the same table, so long as it's not in the same candelabra, one doesn't have two women or two girls lighting on the same candelabra. So long as it's even if it's in the same room, the more light there is, there's more shalom bayis, there's more harmony, more simcha, more joy. And he gives a reference to the Bar Heitev, quoting from Achron Bar Heitev as a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. So the Rebbe here is attempting to justify that don't worry about the fact there's going to be already light when the girl is lighting her candle. So what? Every Friday, it's okay for another woman to light with a bracha, even though there is already light in the room. And he says this is evident from the Minik B'nois Yisrael HaKsheros. This is married women also do this. Look, so this is how the Rebbe reads it. Looks at the situation. Mitzad the tafkido. It's the woman's function to prepare the needs of the house. As part of that function, she makes sure that the room should have enough light without relying on the husband, because it could be that he'll be confused. And so she first goes and switches on the electric light. So there's already light in the room. After that, when there's already light in the room, she goes and makes a bracha on the electric light, on the candles which she's lighting. And not that she first lights the Shabbos candles and then she tells the husband to start switching on the electric lights. So I found this very interesting, that the Rebbe is not saying, as I may have said at previous occasions, more than once, that the electric light is part of the mitzvah. Here the Rebbe is saying almost the contrary, that the woman makes sure that there's electric lights, and that can be done a long while before. And still she's going to make a bracha on the Shabbos candles, and that's because additional light adds to the simcha. Says the Rebbe, if that's the case, that you have got the lights on, the electric lights are on, and you're making a bracha because of extra light, bringing extra simcha, so then there's no problem for a girl to also light a candle, even though there's light as it is, and she's making a bracha because of extra simcha. That's the point which the Rebbe is making. I don't think there's any indication here whether the husband or the wife should switch on electric lights. I think it's no difference. Just like it could be either way. That's one. Personally, I do make it my business to switch on some lights, because that's part of my joining in the mitzvah of Hadlokas Neros. Obviously, I don't make a bracha on that, but yeah. Okay. So the next point is going to be a little bit perhaps entertaining, and that is on On Thursday morning, I was davening Shemona Esrei, and I was thinking I don't have enough questions for tonight's shir. And the reason being was, Baruch Hashem, a very busy week with Yustis Kislev, and personally I had traveled to Europe and back. And so as I'm thinking this Shemona Esrei, then I thought, hey, that's an interesting question. If you have a thought during Shemona Esrei, are you allowed to make a shir out of it? In other words, when a thought falls into your mind during Shemona Esrei, is it from Sitra Achra perhaps? And therefore, you shouldn't be making a shir out of that. Now, those who engage in public speaking from time to time may have similar experiences. Sometimes you're in a room where you are all alone, there's no mezuzah on the room, and a thought, an idea falls into your mind. Oh, that's a good idea for the drosha, for the bar mitzvah this evening. And then, of course, you try to control your machshava, but then you come out and you have that thought. So when a thought comes into your mind in a mokim tomei, this is my question. Is it the fact that your thought came into your mind in an inappropriate place, is that a reason to say, oh, it must be from Sitra Achra, and therefore you shouldn't be using that thought, or that's not an issue? So I did do a research for this, and I did not find anything directly. So two things I did find, one personally, someone else helped me, and that is, there's a famous story in the Gemara Shabbos Daf Kuf Nun Amud Beis, and that's the upper right quote. Maaseh b'chosid echad. There was a chassid, and they say it was Rabbi Yehuda bar Biloi. When it says chassid echad, usually it's referring to Rabbi Yehuda bar Biloi, and he had a breach, and he was walking on Shabbos. He noticed on Shabbos he has a breach in the wall of his field. He decided, well, we're going to have to fix this fence. And then he remembered Shabbos. Oh, it's Shabbos. So some say he had a thought to fix it there and then. Others say, no, he just had a thought to fix it. And he said, Shabbos, as you're thinking about fixing fences. And he decided, I had thought of fixing a fence on Shabbos. No way. And he penalized himself. I'm not going to fix the fence. And a miracle occurred to him in his benefit. And a caper tree grew in that breach. And that ensured his parnosa for himself and for his family. So here he had an inappropriate thought. He took a strong stance to not benefit from this thought, and he was rewarded for this. Incidentally, there are many Meforshim bring from the Arizal that this chassid had a connection with Shlofchad, who had violated Shabbos and was put to death in the times of when the Yidden were in the desert, and he needed a tikkun in Shabbos in Machshove, and so this was his opportunity. And that the fact that it's the tree which grew was a slaf chad. One slaf is a slaf chad is a caper tree, one caper tree. So that's a lot of Meforsh to bring this down. So anyway, so coming back to the main point, we see here that he had an inappropriate thought, and he took a strong stance to distance himself from carrying that out. Although, truthfully, there it's talking about he had a thought which was to do a forbidden act. Here we're talking the other way around. We're talking about a person who is during Shemona Esrei, or lahavdil, in a mokim tomei, and a thought of Torah comes to his mind. And is that okay? Is he allowed to use that, or should he reject that thought? So actually, I do a rehearsal now. On Friday night, we have after Ma'ariv, chazer over some of these points, and one of those present, Rabbi Yidel Weiss, who lives down the road, so he mentioned to me there's actually a Gemara which subsequently I looked up, and this is a Gemara in Zvochim Daf Kuf Beis Omid Beis. Said Rova, it's a bit just bring in the discussion, but says Rova, this din, or this is Rav, Hai Dino, mi Rebeloze B'Reb Shimon Gamirno, de Omer Bebeis HaKiseh. This halacha, which we're just discussing now, I heard it from Rebbe Elazar, the son of Rebbe Shimon. This is Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai, and he had said this in the Beis HaKiseh. towards the end of the Gemara, there's a more whole discussion. And the Gemara asks, "Hechi Ovid Hochi," that's the lower quote, that's from the bottom of the page. How could he do so? That you're now to think Torah everywhere other than in the bathhouse and the toilet, which he answers, the Gemara answers, if it was beyond his control, his mind was, that's a person's thoughts. It's difficult to control your thoughts. So his thoughts came to this, and so he shouldn't be faulted for that. But what we're seeing, though, is the fact that the Gemara brings this as a halacha. So this is very interesting that although it was in a mokem tome, and yet the Gemara brings this into the halacha. So we can't really take a view that it's in Sitra Achra and you have to reject that thought. We see that it's okay. It's, and how much more so if you have a foreign thought during Shemona Esrei. So then, all right, it's not the right thing to be doing. You should be focusing on your davening. But to say that, therefore, that thought is from Sitra Achra and you should reject it, doesn't seem to have a solid basis. Okay. Next question. A woman asks, until when may she eat on Shabbos morning without Kiddush? So we have a halacha that before Kiddush we're not allowed to eat, and that's both true, both Kiddush by night and Kiddush in the day. And here we have, this is from Simresh Pites, as you can see, towards the bottom of the quote, that this Kiddush should be Kiddush b'mokim suda, and you should not klum koidem loy, k'kiddush halayla. You shouldn't eat before the day Kiddush like a night Kiddush. And then he says, you are allowed to drink water before Shachris. Before davening is not a time, you don't have the due, it's not a time for Kiddush. Elsewhere, the Alter Rebbe says also a similar lotion, it's not as man suda. Before davening is not a time for eating. So what happens if a person for his health he or she needs to eat? So according to the Alter Rebbe, before davening is not Zman Seuda. You have to have something, but it's not a time for a meal. But what happens if it's a woman who's not going to be davening? For whatever her pressures are, she doesn't have the ability to stop caring for the children, and she's going to get up in the morning, she'll say Shema, and that's it. She's not going to be davening anymore. That's not the plan for today. So then it looks like she should actually, before she sits down for breakfast, she should make Kiddush, a glass of grape juice or something. Yeah, that's what it looks like. And I see this also in the Shmiras Shabbos Hilchos. It says so quite clearly also that if a woman, if she is planning to daven, then she could take the liberties. Before davening is not as a man's su'udah, it's not a time for a meal. If she's already, if she's not going to daven, then there's nothing to wait for, then she should be making Kiddush. Since I'm already talking about this, I'd like to clarify. I've many times explained in this class in school the difference between a meal and a snack. The snack is just to give you a boost of energy till you get over the next let's say the next half an hour or hour, whatever it may be. A meal is to give you a fill for several hours. So although in Chabad it's quite common that people do eat before davening, and that's in order to give you the energy for davening. It's not a time for a meal. And that's something to be, should be communicated. It's not that we allow eating a meal before Shacharis. It means we allow having enough food to be able to give you the energy to be able to daven. But it's not a time for having a meal with all the indulgence. That you have to leave for later. Or earlier, whatever, before the previous night. Whatever. Let's move on. Okay. So here's a question I received this week, that someone has been a regular donor to a particular institution, and now he wishes to switch and to give his contributions to a different institution instead. Is that permitted? So here we have one of the specialists for him on Hilchas Tzedakah, is a Sefer Tzedakah Mishpat. You see the title there. And I'm just going to read Seif Vav. Misha Rogil Loses Tzedakah Le'oni Mesuyam. If you are accustomed to be giving your tzedakah, giving tzedakah to a particular pauper, lo yeshana miminhogoi losis le'oni achi. You should not switch to start giving to a different person instead. Yesh oimrim. There are those who say that if the second pauper is a relative of yours or is a Talmud Chochem, that is grounds to justify the changing. So to explain something, there is a concept in halacha called makirei kahuna. In the good old days, Bez Hashem, with Moshiach's times, we'll be giving matnus kahuna and levio. So if you have your regular kohen, there becomes a kind of contract that you have got with this person, that you give them your matnus kahuna, and you wouldn't switch that unless there's a very good reason. And so this is a similar idea. There's no contract here, obviously, but there is a relationship. And to break that relationship wouldn't be justified unless there's a very good reason. What this Sefer is suggesting, if, let's say you've been giving to a particular mosid, and now your son or your nephew or whatever, someone who's close to you, opens up a similar institution, that's what he's suggesting, that would be already a moral justification to switch to be giving to this other institution. That's what he's suggesting. But overall, just to switch, to stop giving and giving to another place is not really advised. And now we're going to read a letter of the Rebbe addressing this very, very point. So this is a letter of the Rebbe in Igris Kodesh. You have the reference, it's Cheli Yutes, page Kuf Samach Gimel. So while someone writes to the Rebbe that he's been giving tzedakah regularly according to his capability to various sources, various institutions, etc., now he has a doubt because there are places which are more authentic, so to speak, in their Yerushalayim, and there are those, although they are basically kosher institutions, but they're not behidur, they're not so. Their Yerushalayim, etc., their kashrus is a little bit less than the best. It's okay, but not the best. So perhaps he should switch instead to give to the more muhudar institution and to stop giving his contribution to the one which is not so muhudar. So he's been giving till now to level B, and now he wants to switch and start giving to institution which is level A. That's the question. Says the Rebbe, Machshobos ko'elu, such thoughts always raise a suspicion who is arousing them? Now, before talking about how do I know if a thought is from Sitra Achra? So this seems to be a similar question. Who is encouraging you to switch? Is it mitzad hatoiv legamri? Is it pure goodness, or is it perhaps a thought comes in from the other side? Now the Rebbe explains what's going on here. Possibly it could be that the tzad shekeneged, the sitra achra, comes with all various schemes to discourage a Jew from doing Torah mitzvahs. Now, if it's going to come with a frontal attack and say, don't give tzedakah, well, you're not going to listen to him. So therefore, he uses the word mechapes. He looks for, it's interesting how that ever prays in the words, mechapes or mischapes. Mischapes means to dress up, to disguise. So the Yetzer Hara, he seeks and he disguises himself. You've got this cloak of, I don't know how you translate. The word savua means a person who's not genuine. So he comes up with this thing, and it comes along and he suggests, you know what? You give me to this place, you can be give to A. Later he'll come, says you're giving so much to one institution, give them as much as you've been giving till now. And then what's going to happen is to the A, you'll give as much as you're giving till now. B, you've decided not going to give them. So you're not going to give the again. So there's your amount of contributions will be cut down, and B will be out of the picture. And you're not going to give more to the moistest, which are more muhuder. And the Rebbe continues, Bichlal yadua azhoras chazal bekam enyon tzedakah. Generally, when it comes to tzedakah, shaloi livdog yosimidai, not to be overly, not to be scrutinizing excessively. How much more so, don't be overly scrutinizing with a moisid, which you yourself acknowledge that it's a kosher moisid, but it's not as muhuder. So the Rebbe says, don't look badly at them. Very, very interesting how the Rebbe is basically he's discouraging this idea of cutting down from one to give to the other. I just want to throw in a fascinating story in Gematria Baba Basra, which comes to mind as I'm speaking, that the father sends the son to deliver an amount of money to a poor family on the other side of town. The kid comes back and says, Ta, they don't need the money. They were sprinkling wine in the house to give it a nice fragrance. Now that was the wealthy people would do that. So the kid is saying to the father that they are quite comfortable. You don't need to give them financial assistance. So the father says the following: we have to be grateful for the imposters, because if every need which came our way had been totally genuine, then the fact that we don't assist everyone all the way would be a terrible indictment on ourselves. The fact that there are imposters out there, that is a mitigating factor for ourselves, for the fact that we do not extend ourselves fully for every needy person who comes our way. Okay, someone's put here on the chat a couple of questions, so I'm going to relate to that. Okay, let's go. Is changing tzedakah from a pauper the same gravity as from an institution? I don't think there's any difference. The point is that you have a particular beneficiary on a regular. I'm not talking about the fellow you just meet in the street one day yes, one day not. If there's a particular beneficiary who you've been helping on a regular basis for over a period and now decide to stop that is an issue. How to give an institution without crossing the threshold of commitment? That's a good question. Correction, is changing stock of an institution the same gravity as from a pauper? I think it's the same idea that you've created a kind of relationship here, and there is a reliance on your regular donation, and then to break that relationship would be similar to the idea of makire kahuna, which you shouldn't be switching unless there's a very good reason. All right, let's go on. And now here, someone brought to my attention that in some of the Hamish news sheets, so in this part of the world, you have Hamish news sheets. I know some of the listeners would love to have Hamish news sheets coming through your door. We have about 5 of them every week. It's ridiculous. But some of them come with advertisements, which have got Ksava Shuri, Risifatoy writing, and she was quite upset about this. And so actually she said about a story with someone who, a story with the Rebbe about this. Now, I'm going to tell the story first, then can come back to the halacha. So this is this is from Rabbi Dani Ashkenazi, who is a shliach in Palo, in Brazil. And when he got engaged, so they're going to print invitations. So they printed, so he's a sofer. He gets trained as a sofer. So he wrote his own wedding invitation. And he wanted to give a first invitation. He wanted to give to the Rebbe. So he went to New York, and he went into the Maskiras, and he gave the Hebrew side of the invitation to give it to the Rabbi Groner, Allah Shalom, should give it to the Rebbe. Rabbi Groner looks at it. He says, "Who wrote this?" It's like impressed with the beautiful ksav. He says, "I wrote it." So he says, But do you know that the Rebbe is not happy about people making invitations with Ksav Ashuri, with the Sefer Torah writing, because afterwards it's then thrown into the bin. It's a disgrace. But no, Label says, no. So Danny said, no, if that upsets the Rebbe, I'm not going to give it in. Give it back. And they had already printed 700 invitations. They sent 690 of them into Seamus and kept just 10 of them, just for remembrance. And they reprinted a new invitation with regular writing. So I'm telling you the story. I'm so impressed with the Chassidish Hergesh of Ingeman, without going to Lomdus. If the Rebbe is going to be upset, I'm not going to do it. Okay, so now this is from Shulchan Aruch, it's the last seif in Hilchos Sefer Torah, and this is from the Ramah. As you can see, the underlined writing, the highlighted writing. Yesh oimrim de'ein lichtoiv dvorim shel choil bichsav ashuris shekoisbin boi haTorah. There are those who say that you should not use the Sefer Torah writing, that script. You should not use it for mundane matters. It's a disgrace. It's because it's dedicated for Sefer Torah. There on Mezuzah's Tefillin, it shouldn't be used for mundane stuff. So now, then we have next to this, we have a letter from the Rebbe's letters, a Chelik Yud Beis. After my apologizing to you, and although it seems to be after the fact, but I want to raise the issue. I see invitations which are printed with Ksav Ashuris, plus even the tagin, the little crowns on the letters. It's well known how much the Rishonim and Achronim, how much effort they made to justify using block writing, because block writing is like a very basic writing, and the Sephardic script for Sefer Torah is like our block writing, a little bit more, perhaps a bit more fancy, but it's basically very similar. And so really you can ask the same question. Even block writing, Hebrew block writing, and that's actually one of the reasons why they developed on the margin of the Shulchan Aruch here in Reish Pei Vav. It's mentioned that's why they developed the Rashi writing. Or you can see sometimes Sephardic form, they had another script. They developed other scripts because when it comes to mundane stuff, they wanted to write in Hebrew, but they didn't want to use this the Ksav Ashuri. So they developed other scripts as an alternative. And so when it came to printing Sforim with block writing, that wasn't an easy ride. But there should be, that one should try to do, that the writing, even if you're doing block writing, it should not resemble the Ksav Ashuris. And he says, for you, I don't have to elaborate on this. And he gives reference to the Gilyon Marshal, this is Reb Shlomo Eger, on the margin of Simaresh Pedalet. He quotes also another Sefer Tzor Yaakov. Earlier, the Rambam, in his correspondence, in his Sefer, his response called Pe'er Hadoir, quoted in the Reb Beis Yosef, in Reish Pei Gimel Gen Yerdeo, and the Radvaz in 2 places, which I didn't look up all of those sources, but this is just bringing the point that the Rebbe he's saying here, really it's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch, that one should not be using Ksav Ashuris for mundane stuff. So using them for advertisements, etc., is not really the right thing. Let's see what Arya Freeman writes. Today we place tagging on Sefer Torah writing due to minhag. Tefillin mezuzahs are chiyuv. Even our print in the Siddur is fardi velish. Right, but the point is that we do have a dedicated Ksav, at least we do, which was clearly, we call it Sefer Torah writing, and that shouldn't be used for mundane stuff. Okay, let's move on. Right, so I don't normally talk about SNEAS issues in this year, but a teacher asked me to clarify this, and so that's why I'm dealing with it. Okay, there's something called leggings, apparently, and they are like, for those who are not familiar what this is, it's like tracksuit kind of, it's like it's a perhaps like made of cotton, but it's a kind of trousers which hug the leg, and they go down obviously from higher up in the body, go down till the ankles approximately. And so there is, it's said that there is a problem with the issue, or it's needed for them to explain what the issue is. So I really want to first explain the lomnus a little bit. The Gemara, in this Gemara in Brochas Daf Chof Dalet, Omar Rav Chisda shoik be'isho erva, that for a woman to expose her shoik, a part of the body called shoik, that would be considered erva, it would be embarrassing, etc. And he gives a reference to a posuk in Shir Hashirim, Gali shoik, Ivri Naharis, whatever the posuk is. Okay, now what is the definition of shoik? Here's very, very interesting. Now, we have the word shoik comes up in Torah, chosev shoik. It's mentioned about for the karbonos, that the shoik of the animal, and the shoik of the animal. So this is the hind leg of an animal. I guess this area, the top area, is called the pelvis. But this top piece, the leg is basically in three sections. The top section, the top third, is called the yerech. The middle third is called the shoik, and the bottom third is called the regel. Now, to explain, the human leg is also made of three parts. You've got the upper leg, the lower leg, and then you've got the foot. An animal doesn't have a foot. It doesn't have the horizontal foot, which humans have, at least most animals. And so when we say shoik in the animal, the shoik of the animal is away from, it's above this first joint. It's the second piece of the leg. So what we're seeing here is a confusion. And where exactly is the shoik? Is the shoik the upper leg or is it the lower leg? So curiously, the Mishnah Berurah seems to take the view that the shoik is the upper leg. Most other poskim don't agree with that. And most other poskim understand that the shoik is the lower leg. And when the Gemara says shoik be'isha erva, they're referring to the lower leg. You all know that one of the words for socks in Hebrew is batei shokayim. So that means the socks are pulled over the lower leg. That's the shoik. But the Mishnah Berurah is a little bit, he takes the view that the shoik is the upper part. So according to Mishnah Berurah, the exposure of the lower leg would not be asur. According to most other poskim, it is asur. Then there's a difference in dinim of tznius about wearing something very tight, wearing very clothes, very clinging kind of garments, which are so exposing the profile. So on the lower leg, the minig, by and large, is that it's covered, but it doesn't matter that it's covered with something which is opaque and where the profile is obviously visible. The upper leg is that should be covered, and in a way that the profile should not be visible. So let's come back to this question about these leggings. One of the issues is where the bottom of the leggings feet meet the ankle, the foot. So long as the area is covered with socks or something, then that will be okay on that part. The other part is apparently, and this is all secondhand information. It's quite common that people who are wearing leggings would wear a shorter skirt, and that again is a problem, as I'm just explaining. The upper part of the leg should be not only opaque, covered in opaque material, but also shouldn't be in a way that the profile should be emphasized. So this is what you have over here in got from the Sefer Piskei Teshuvos again. This is in Siman Ayin Hey, and he quotes the Mishnah Berurah, and then he says that all the other sources, Hayodom, etc., they say that from the karstul ad haberech, from the ankle until the knee, that's the shoik. And therefore, that women are careful to wear socks of sorts, stockings of sorts, which would cover the lower leg, even at home, not to be machshel other people, to be able to say a brocha or something if that's exposed. So I hope that's added a little bit clarity to the issue. So to summarize that, so long as there is a skirt which is well over past the knee, and where the foot meets the leg, by the ankle area, if that is covered also, that shouldn't be a problem. Right. One of our questions from Moshe Pulat is asking, since we've been talking about not using Ksav Ashuri for mundane stuff, can you use a Kiddush cup for drinking water? And the answer is yes. It's not the same. Here it's a Kiddush cup it's a keli. It's for yourself to drink. Ksav Ashuri is dedicated for something which is holy, not just, you've got a difference between Tashmishe Kedusha, Tashmishe Mitzvah. So, so you can, if you want to have a drink from your Kiddush cup, you can continue doing so. Okay. Here's a mamash standard well, Rabbi Isharavich Gronal, he used to say this, a tepel lefel shaila, a really regular question. So a milk knife with dried cheese residue was put into a fleshik mug. Boiling water was poured into the mug. The hot water from the mug was then poured into the empty fleshik sink. What's the status or halachic status of the knife, the mug, and the sink? All right, so let's say the fleshik, even if the mug was a ben yoimoy of hot fleshik soup. All right, probably that wasn't the case in any case, but so the knife is not a problem. I'm assuming, so I'm changing the goalposts. But the mug wasn't used in the last 24 hours for hot fleshik soup, and therefore the knife is not a problem. It doesn't become treif because of the mug, because the mug is in a ben yoimah. The question is, what about the sink? Well, once the water came into the mug and then was poured into the sink, so the water is already at least klisheni or less than klisheni. So they're not a problem for the sink. What about the mug? So if there had been a lot of water poured into the mug, then you could possibly use the concept of bittul b'shishim. If you could assess there was 60 times water over the cheese on the knife. Other than that, if there wasn't so much water, so there we have a worry. You have a belia of absorbing of a taste of cheese into a fleshik mug. That's the concern. Now, what my answer was, that if it is I asked if it's part of a set or is it one of those standalone. If it's part of a set, then there's a question of a loss involved, and we would certainly be able to rely on that. Here you have a quote from the Shulchan Aruch and Simon Ches. So with this is you can't kasher a mug usually, and so it's a b'diavad. And if it were part of a set, I would certainly say that you don't have to throw it away because it's on the level of klisheni. If it was just, as I say, a standalone, not part of a set, then there would be room to be machmir and give it to your cleaning lady, and who'll be happy to use it. Okay, let's go on. So here I got a shayla from shliach somewhere in Ukraine, and it came up with this discussion with his local people about lifting a child, a toddler, who's walking on Shabbos, the toddler, and then the toddler refuses to cooperate. What are you allowed to do now? And he had understood that you're not allowed to do anything, and his people had picked up information from elsewhere that they could, and so he asked me. I said, "Listen, let's get a clear picture." So here's the story. So we have a general principle of chai noise es atzmoi, that a living being bears its own weight. Now, for that, however, this heter of chai noise es atzmoi, it means you're not punishable for carrying a living creature. If you would carry a cat or a dog, you would be liable for carrying. The reason why chai noise es atzmoi is an exemption for not being punished is because the passenger, so to speak, is cooperating and helping you carry to carry it. If the animal, let's say, is wriggling and not cooperating at all, then you can't say it's a party to your malach. On the contrary, it's actually acting as a right old nuisance. So you can't use the heter of chai ses atzmai. What do we have here? What do we have other cheshbonis? We could say if it's a small town, you could say that we don't have 600,000 users of this Rosh Hashanah, and therefore you could say Isad Rabbanon, you could bring that in. So what we're looking for is to make it into a shvus de shvus, l'tzorech gadol. Obviously, it's a tzorech gadol, this toddler in the street, it is a tzorech gadol. So if we can bring it down to Rabbanon on 2 counts, then we'd be able to allow it. So let's read what Shmiras Shabbos Gelchosa writes. Yeled, a child who stops in the middle of the street or in the Karmelis, and you cannot motivate him to actually continue walking, you're allowed to carry him pochos midal adamas. That you carry 2 steps, 3 steps, and you stop, and then you continue. That's to do that is an issue of the Rabbanon. But in the circumstances, to do that, pochos midal adamas, let's say carrying a bouquet of flowers, would be issue of the Rabbanon. Now it's not a flowers; it's a child, so it's a chai noise atzmai. So you've got your two Rabbanons. It's the idea of going in spurts of less than dal damas, one after the other. That's one aspect. The other aspect is chai noise atzmai. He doesn't bring in the idea of perhaps we don't have a Rosh Hashanah deraisa. As I say, that won't help in a big city. What I also want to add is also that if the child is actually throwing a tantrum and not cooperating at all, so the heter of chai noisias atzmai also falls away. And therefore, if you are in a big city and you wanted to do pochos medal damas, I think you'd have to first calm the child down till the child is cooperating and then happy to be carried, and then you go pochos medal damas. Obviously, we're not talking about middle of the road and the traffic is coming, etc., because we're not talking about pikuach nefesh. We're just talking about you have to get home. That's all. Right. So here, someone's asking, we're going back to the mug. Does it help leaving the mug for a year? So that does help if it was a loss involved. There is a chacham tzvi, and where there's a substantial loss or a sentimental issue about you want to hold on to that, then we can rely on this. But normally for a simple mug, no, we wouldn't go for that. It's only this idea of waiting a year is a heter where there's substantial loss or concern. Rabbi Singer is asking, isn't there Kuntras Achar and Hilchos Pesach maybe about not making an Issur of Bosa B'cholov if the Blia is Pogum? If I'm not mistaken, you're referring to Siman Tov Nun Aleph, Sif Yud Gimel, not a Kuntras Achar, but there's a very beautiful note there about Bosa B'cholov, Hetera Bola, etc. All right, but I guess we'll have to discuss later. Let's move on. Here we go. All right. So next question. I'm not totally confident, but the question was raised, and the question is the following. So I bought a property for an investment. For investment, let's say I bought this property. It cost 500,000. I had a down payment of 200,000. I borrowed 300,000 from a building society, from a bank, and I have a tenant there. The tenant pays rent. So now I'm getting an income. Do I have to give Meiser from the rental income? That was the question. So I thought about this for a while, and I mean, let's try to come from a particular angle. Let's say I'm a grocery. I sell cheese. I sell a block of cheese for £5. How much did I pay for this? I paid, let's say, the wholesale price. I paid £2. I've got my markup, my rental, I have to run my overheads. So if I sell a block of cheese for £5, if I made £1 on it, I'm lucky. Yeah. So how much? So I don't take mice from the £5. I take mice from the £1. So in this case, with this investment, I bought this property and I've got this massive mortgage of £300,000, and I get rent. And I'm not really making any profit as yet. This is like to pay my overheads. Obviously, after a while, there will be an equity, and from the equity, I should be giving myself. So never really learned the details of accountancy. Is there a difference between income tax and a wealth tax? So the income, I wouldn't see that the regular rent would be subject to giving Meiser, but after some time, when there is a realized equity, especially if you're going to sell the property, and then you say, well, I bought this property 200,000. Now I was able to sell it and have an equity of another 100,000. Well, then at that point, you should be putting aside Meiser of the equity. That's the best I could do. With I tried to find a bit more sources on that, and I didn't find it be addressed so clearly. Okay, here I had this question. A non-Jew asked me why Yidden, two questions, why Yidden shokel and why Yidden wear a talus when praying. May I give the Goy a Torah explanation? So really this question is teaching Torah to Goyim. Torah is given to us. Are we allowed to teach a Goy Torah? So generally we shouldn't be teaching Goyim Torah. Some say that that's only Torah Shebal Peh, Torah Shebichsav you are allowed to teach them. Also, if they come along with this is from a sefer called Psokim Tshuvos on Hilchos Talmud Torah, and he's talking about this detail about teaching Goyim Torah. If the Goy knows, he comes along and he seems to know a halacha, but he's misunderstood it. So you're allowed to, and he thinks, well, you're not doing the right thing, and therefore you're allowed to just explain. I remember when I was learning to drive, that's going back a few years, and actually my driving instructor was actually Jewish, but he asked the question, how come you have photographs, which says in the Ten Commandments, you mustn't have a graven image? So I explained to him that means a sculpture and not a flat picture. So I'm just giving the example. If Lahavdil, if a Goy would ask that question, and they say, well, you are violating your own the Ten Commandments by having photographs in your house, and you will explain to him, no, that the halacha is referring to sculptures, not to pictures. So that seems to be okay. But coming back to the immediate question, a Goy asked why you didn't shokel or why you didn't wear a talus. I did say about the talus. I told the person asking, refer the Goy to read Psalm 102. So there you have in Torah Shebichsav, talks about a person wrapping himself in prayer. The idea of why we shokel, we know that there is a mention in the I think the Kuzri that is the reminiscent of Har Sinai, of Vayar Ha'om Vayanu, but I didn't think that there's a reason to tell the Goy explanation to Zinin and Torah, and no need to be matir to tell the Goy the reason for it. Finally, what we have on the list is that someone's asking the question that they're going to be spending Shabbos Chanukah at they live in one area, they're coming for Shabbos to another area, to their children's home, can spend their Shabbos. So Friday evening, before Shabbos, the son will light the menorah, and the mother will be yotze from her son. This is a woman's asking the question. She asks the question of Motzei Shabbos. can she be yotze from her son before she goes back home, or does she have to light when she gets back to her own house? So generally, one should be lighting menorah in one's own house. But here, actually, if necessary, one could be makel and say, listen, it's still her house until she's left. So because she came there and she spent the night Friday night, so this has become her home for this period until she leaves their home. Then it's still her home. It's an interesting question which comes up when the chasna if a person gets married during Hanukkah, where does the chasna light menorah? Because in the morning he lived in one house, and the evening he lives in another house. Where exactly should the chasna be lighting the menorah? Especially, you don't want to leave menorah till after he comes home after the whole chasna, likely forget, and also eating a whole meal with other mices before a mitzvah is also questionable. Sometimes the chasanim will, depending on the timing of the chuppah, etc. One solution would be actually to light the menorah in the yichud room. Chasan pays rental for the yichud room, and they eat something there, and that's their home for that time. That would be one solution. Now, I just want to finish off. I'm finishing a little bit early, and I had some very nice feedback about the discussion we had a few weeks ago about Mansapach and how the division of Mansapach allows it to be divided to 90 and 90 and 100, and that being the Gematria of Melech, Molech, and Yimlech. So I had, then there's a Zohar which connects it with Yaboik. And I was thinking today, should I share it tonight? It's a nice thing. And then the Epishat Geholfen, I saw at the end of Parshas Vayeshev, it says at the end of each parsha, it says how many psukim there are in that sedra. And it says it's got Kuf Yud Beis psukim, Yaboik Simon. By the way, they shouldn't have put a vav there. So we had last week Yaakov Avinu crossing Nachal Yaboik, the brook called Yaboik. Now the word Yaboik, which is Gematria 112, has great significance in Kabbalah. And here we have a Zohar. The Zohar, as you can see, is in Chelik Gimel, Reish Yud Zayin, Daf Reish Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. And the Zohar says, Havaya, Eya, and Adni, together those three shemus equal 112, is Yaboik. And so Adni is 65, 65 and 26 and 21 equals 112. But then the Zohar says, V'inun melech moloch yimlech. And so you read the Zohar, what's melech, moloch, and yimlech got to do with 112? So the answer is, I don't know if we've discussed this before, that there's Gematria not only of letters, but there's also Gematria of the vowels. And the rule of this is, I think, exclusively in Kabbalah, but the rule is that every dot is a yud, has a value of 10. Every line is a vav, and therefore has a value of 6. A kometz is a combination of a line and a dot. Therefore, it's 16. Okay, so there we go. Melech has got 2 segels. That's 30 and 30 equals 60. Moloch is 2 kometzins. That's 16 and 16 is 32. And Yimloich, we're ignoring the shavoin. We're just the outright vowel. So we've got a chirik and a cholam. Yimloich. And so therefore you've got 2 dots. That's equals 20. So 20 and 60 and 32 equals 112. So that's what the Zohar is saying, that Havaya Adni and Eya is Gematria Yaboik, and that is alluded to in Melech, Molech, and Yimloich in the Gematria of the vowels, not the Gematria of the letters. Just to finish off, that this, I was just last night I was browsing for something else. I was looking about something about Kiddush, not for now, but meanwhile, I saw the following in passing, that in the capital 20 of Tehillim, so Ya'anenu v'yom korenu. So that's Yud Beis Kuf, Rosh Hashanah, Ya'anenu v'yom korenu is 112. For that matter, the beginning of the chapter, after Lam Natzech Mishal David, the pasuk base, Ya'anchu Hashem b'yom tzara is Yud Yud Beis Tzadik. Again, you have the Gematria of 112. So again, you've got the remes to this inyan of Yaboik in the beginning and in the end. That's as much as I can tell you for the moment about this Shem of Yaboik. There is a sefer, I'm sure many people are aware, called Ma'avor Yabuk is actually all about persons passing on from this world to the next world. Fascinating sefer, but again, I don't have more details to share with you at the moment. I'm just going to wish you all a I've got a Motzei Shabbos and a Feil Chanukah. I'm just going to look at the chats. I spend Shabbos. Someone's asking me that he spends his Shabbos he spends in one place because he's a rabbi in that place, and then he comes home. He tries to leave so really in this case you have a choice. If you're in one place for Shabbos and then you're going to another place Motzei Shabbos, you could light at your apartment in the shul while you're still there. But if you can get home and light at home, that would probably be better. And then you can sit there and relax at your menorah, which is part of the mitzvah of menorah, is actually to listen to the lichtelach, to sit there and so there's an inyan of liroisim, there's an inyan of staying with the menorah liroisim, and so I guess that would be the better one, instead of being nervous and waiting to put them out, to just get in the car, go home and light them at home. All right, so I wish you all a Feil Chanukah and Simchas Tov Kol Hayom and Kol Tov.
Mandatory now from next week, masks and use of braces and